Bills and Eagles on Sunday. It's a football Friday here on WGR. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas yesterday. Got everything you wanted. Chris Brown with us now on the Wester Hotline. Chris, favorite gift that you got yesterday? What'd you get?
Got a new coffee machine, so pretty happy about that.
Nice.
My old one was kind of petering out, so very timely gift for sure.
Well, good. This game, Chris, on Sunday between the Bills and the Eagles, we'll see. It could be a rainy affair. How do you look at these two teams and how they match up? Do you think it could be one of those games that it's two great teams, defending Super Bowl champion? Bills have the longest playoff streak now in the league. But both teams tend to play these slower, lower-scoring games, and maybe that's what we get Sunday.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting both teams to try to come out and establish their run game. So I think early on it could look like a rock fight with just teams trying to mash at the line of scrimmage against one another. And I think we know the caliber of Buffalo's offensive line and the caliber of the Eagles' defensive line. And I don't know that the Eagles' offensive line is as strong as it was last year, but it's still probably a top 5 line in the league. So how does Buffalo's defensive front hold up to that? I think that'll be a big determining factor there in the early going.
Yeah, and without them having Lane Johnson, that's obviously a big critical part of that too. And he has not practiced this week. We'll see if that changes at all today. But if they don't have him, that's obviously a big difference. The Bills' offense, Chris, against this Eagles' defense, how do you expect, if there's any limiting of Josh Allen, that would look? Would you think, running the ball with him specifically, long developing plays, and maybe there's a lot more of a quick game today? Or do you think on Sunday, or do you think they'll change anything on that front?
Yeah, I really am interested to see what Coach McDermott says today, about Josh, because every time you ask Josh about, an ailment or some little nick that he's got, he downplays it, says he'll be fine. But if his mobility is compromised, that does shrink the playbook to some degree. Like, can he do bootlegs? Can he do rollouts? Are you avoiding those? Is design runs, as you said, off the table now? So I'm curious to hear what Coach has to say today, number one. And then number two, in the game, what are we seeing Josh do and not do? Because I think it was pretty evident once that foot injury happened, they didn't really put him out on the move very much in the second half of that football game.
Right. Yeah, and we'll see what Sean McDermott says today when he's on the Extra Point Show. He'll do his media availability after that as well. The injury report in totality, Chris, they're starting to pile up, at least for this week. We'll see about Kincaid and Knox. That's kind of a tough one too. Like if both were unavailable, I don't know what their passing offense looks like, whatever, volume they would throw the ball. I mean, those two have been critical parts this year, and if you're just going in with Jackson Hawes and then someone from the practice squad, like that's a pretty big loss depending on, again, their availability.
Right. I tend to believe that the Kincaid thing is something we're going to see every week going forward. I think he's going to miss either 1 or 2 days of practice every week the rest of the way here as part of their injury management with him. It's pretty clear this is going to be a knee injury that's going to require attention in the off season. So they're just managing it now. And I would anticipate, he's going to be on the injury report every week for the rest of the season and probably miss a day or two of practice because, as Coach McDermott said last week, the ultimate goal is to have him as fresh as possible for the game. So I think we have to take that into account with regard to Kincaid's listing. You're right, though. Knox is a new addition. So we'll have to see where that goes today. And you're right. Like, they've really leaned in to the tight ends and backs in their passing game because their receivers have been inconsistent. And I think I'm being kind with that description. There just hasn't been enough production from the receiving core outside of Shakir on a consistent basis. And I think they've turned to other areas to find that consistency, namely their tight ends and their backs. And, if you're missing those guys in numbers, that's a problem.
Yeah. Is there any one of those receivers right now, Chris? I mean, really, it's the group as a whole, but is there any one guy that you feel like is most likely to become someone that Allen trusts down the stretch here?
Well, I think we know that Josh already trusts Gabe Davis. And so I think in light of what you have not gotten from your receiving core the last 2 weeks, I would be surprised if he is not reinserted into the lineup, because there's a history there. There's production there in big games. And I don't know that you can really say that about anyone else in that receiving core. I'm talking receivers only, besides Shakir, who has come up big for Josh, as we know, even in playoff games. So outside of those two, there just isn't enough of a track record of consistent production. It just seems like the offensive staff is spinning the dial every week, trying to find a combination that's going to click in the passing game for the Bills, and they still haven't found it yet, which is a little disconcerting in Week 17.
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, the Bills, we know their history this season at run defense. The Eagles are not the same rush attack they were last year, though. So I guess how concerned are you, and do you think Bills fans should be about that specific matchup for Sunday?
I think they should be concerned. It's the reigning offensive player of the year in Saquon Barkley. And yes, the run game for the Eagles has found traction the last 2 weeks against the Raiders and Commanders, who are not good run defenses. But I think we all know the Bills don't rank very highly in that area either. So I anticipate the Eagles are going to try to test that. I mean, any good offensive coordinator would, just by looking at their ranking against the run. So I think they're going to challenge them with Saquon, and you better be ready to wrap up or at least hang on to one of those 32-inch quads, that Saquon has until help arrives, because he is still very elusive, very powerful, and very fast, which is what makes him so gifted as a runner. And you really have to keep those gains under 10 yards. You cannot give him explosives, or it's going to be a long afternoon.
Yeah. How does the idea of a game plan sound to you of you sell out to stop their run at all costs and you dare Jalen Hurts to beat you through the air? Does that sound like a game plan that you think could get them killed, or do you feel like that's the right way to approach it?
Well, yeah, that's kind of the problem here, Joe, right? Because you can dedicate assets to stopping Barkley and trust the guys on the back end, who I will say, like, coverage-wise, they've really kind of stepped up their game on the back end, I feel the Bills have, in the coverage area. But Poyer is a question mark, and he's kind of been instrumental in getting people lined up pre-snap. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And then the lack of a consistent pass rush by just rushing 4 compromises that plan, because, if it is an obvious passing down, yes, you're still mindful of Barkley on a screen, which is an area they got victimized last week. So I just think there's a lot of bases to cover with this Eagles offense. And, we haven't even mentioned Dallas Goedert, who is tied for the league lead among tight ends with 10 touchdowns. So to me, it's more than just an A.J. Brown problem in the passing game. And when you have to dedicate extra assets to your pass rush, you kind of leave yourself, in one-on-one situations on the back end with some pretty elite talent.
Yep. Smith, too, of course, on the offense as well. Sunday, Bills and Eagles, second-to-last home game. Chris, thanks again for jumping on, and we'll talk to you on Sunday.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Chris Brown on the Western Hotline. One Bills Live a little bit later on. Sean McDermott on the Extra Point Show today here on a Football Friday. The Bills a slight favorite over Philadelphia. We'll take a look at some more of their games when we come back, especially some of these gross, low-scoring games that we've mentioned that Philly plays this year. So they've done that against some good teams. That when we come back, your phone calls. We got open hour coming up at 9 o'clock. If you got a thought on the game or the AFC playoff field, as Denver doesn't look impressive at all. And that could be a team the Bills see down the road.